this tonight. So, first of all, great movie.
Thank you.
And not to reminisce, but we know each other how long now? 15, 20?
Yeah.
And we developed that movie together at Warner's, The Witches, the Roald Dahl movie, which didn't get made.
It never got made.
Yeah.
It was amazing because Guillermo wrote the script and Alfonso was producing with you.
Yeah.
And it was the best schooling you could ever have creatively as a filmmaker.
And we met Tom Cruise introduced us.
Tom Cruise introduced us. That's how we know each other.
Yeah. and you were so excited. Yeah.
I was so excited to meet you.
Yeah.
And we spent all night at this dinner in Melbourne, Australia, talking.
Yeah.
And Guillermo is much more polite than I am. And you turned to Tom halfway through the dinner and said, "I must apologize, I'm monopolizing all of Michael's time."
Yeah.
And Tom was like, "Are you kidding me? This is fucking fantastic!"
Yes, and I think, if I remember, we were talking and you were so nice, so happy, and I said to you, Hollywood is a 24-hour buffet of disappointment.
So I was thrilled because obviously I was meeting Guillermo and I was a huge fan of his work. And I was saying, you know, like, I'm just starting, you know, to work with Hollywood and you're already in Hollywood and I'm this kid from Australia and you're from Mexico. Like, how amazing is this? And Guillermo just looked at me. I don't know what you were working on at the time.
Yes.
Guillermo just said, deadpan, Hollywood is a 24-hour buffet of disappointment. and my entire experience of working in Hollywood, that rings in my head all the time.
Well, the reality is that it is and it isn't, depending on where you are in the merry-go-round. But it's interesting that from the start, you wanted to do things your way. You know, there's Australian minimalism that George Miller, you, and Baz Luhrmann have. You know, this minute and almost imperceptible, like Ozu light, yeah. But you always wanted. I mean, when we developed The Witches, we had so much fun. We developed a whole look, a whole style. And when you developed BFG, another Roald Dahl.
Yeah.
You know, and you always had this almost unsustainable desire to have a pitch like this. I think that for some people, the greatest showman on earth is a religion at this point. You know, some people really adore it the way one would expect a musical to be adored. And I think you both do one of the great musicals, and you deconstruct part of it. Tell me a little bit, because you must have learned a lot out of Showman.
Yeah. This film is definitely lessons learned on Showman, no question. You know, Greatest Showman was my first film, and there were elements of that I'm truly proud of, and there's elements of that, you know, which I'm sure you had on your...
It's a fabulous first film.
But there's elements that I was really frustrated because it wasn't what I had in my head. And, you know, and you just hope after making your first film that you get a chance to do it again. You know, Showman took 8 years to make.
Yeah.
And so by the time it's finished, you just hope that you get that chance again within your lifetime to apply the things that you now know. And this took 6 years to make.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, just as a filmmaker, there's things in this that I'm very proud are things that I learned when I was doing Showman, and I swore to myself, if I ever got the chance to make another film, that I would get these things right. And so it's very satisfying to watch that progression. And by no means there is another whole group of lessons during this film that I learned.
Yeah, but emotionally, I mean, look, the movie is extremely nimble. It can go from a huge set piece to an incredibly intimate moment within seconds. And they both land. What is surprising about this movie is the tonal shifts that come fast, furiously, one after the other, and it all lands. You know, that is so beautiful and nimble. The imagery is never anything but ambitious and precise, because you can see ambitious and misguided, and then you see ambitious and precise. His crash into the water and the image of the paparazzi floating from the water, everything makes emotional sense. And in that is sort of a voice-over, is also visually his mind.
Yeah.
Did you know you were trying to do this from the beginning?
Yeah, I think that trying to frame the film with a unique way into it with the monkeys. So with a musical, you're already in a place of heightened reality, meaning we don't walk down the street and just burst into song. So you set that contract with the audience and they will go with you for the rest of the film.
Yes.
Then add a monkey on top of it, and you're
I'm gonna remake all my movies with a monkey.
so
The shape of monkey.
So then, once you add a monkey on top of it, you're in even more heightened reality.
Of course.
And the wonderful thing about that, because
I'll take your word for it.
the wonderful thing about that is I knew I wanted to explore both Robbie Williams' external life and his internal life.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start exploring his internal life, it is the world of imagination. And so you can step between reality at a very heightened reality and imagination underwater, which is all what's going on in his mind as he's unraveling. You can move between those two worlds quite seamlessly without it ever feeling jarring.
The speed at which, I mean, these beats, I'm telling you, is commendable and beautiful. And I've said this before, some people think that more is easier, or faster or more baroque is easier. It isn't. Compositionally, it's extremely hard. The speed at which he goes from meeting her to singing She's the One is breathtaking. So, and the thing is, you have one conflict to explore, basically, which is the conflict that starts the movie with the father, and the conclusion it reaches is extremely serene. I mean, he doesn't turn into a human.
Yeah.
He says, look, this is who I am, basically, and you don't like it, fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's beautiful in that sense, too.
I think that there were people who talked about wanting to see him at the end of the film, and I was like, but he's still a monkey. He never, he hasn't evolved. If you meet Robbie Williams, he's 16 years old, he is. That would sound like a laugh of someone who's met him. And whilst he's made peace with himself, he still has all those battles, to this day. So, yeah, it didn't make sense to me narratively or emotionally, because your entire investment in the film is in the monkey. It's not in the human. Well,
it is, I mean, what I find remarkable, and Kim Morgan and I dealt with it on Nightmare Alley very judiciously, and a story about addiction can't have a happy end.
No.
It's an everyday fight.
No.
It never quite ends. You're always going to have the monkey there, right? And I think that the beauty of the movie is that he makes peace with who he is.
Yeah.
Not included, but saliently that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there are moments in which the addiction, one of the things addiction movies don't show is how good it feels. Yeah. And I think it's important morally and ethically that the movie shows not only the moments where he's down and crying, the moments where he's high and flying.
Yeah.
And he takes you there.
Yeah, it's, this whole film was based on a year and a half of sitting and talking with Rob and just recording those conversations. and some of the voiceovers are actually taken from those recordings.
Conversation.
Yeah, and they were really hard to replicate. You know, when you then piece it together as a narrative, you want these joining statements. But every time I tried to record them with him, they just felt scripted, because all the other moments are so conversational, and he just went. He really went to those dark places, and he really went to those joyous places, and I'm a big believer that you feel the light so much more when you go to the dark. I mean, you do that masterfully.
I think most people that are functional do that.
No, but a lot of it gets, you know, a lot of it often gets, the darkness gets sanitized, you know.
Mm-hmm. But you know, the other thing that, I mean, this is unofficially the year of the musical.
Yeah.
There are at least 4 musicals.
Mia Perez is extraordinary. I've seen that film now 4 times.
But what I like, if you take a musical in its most classical form, the moments, the songs come out of moments that emotionally need to exist for the characters to express themselves, not just declare to the audience the I am or I want song, or it's not by the numbers. It's meant to come out of an emotion. Yeah.
So I always say that you sing when words no longer suffice. So if you cannot express it in any other way, you go for it. You break into song, which tends to be, in an operatic sense, at emotional low points and emotional high points. And so the narrative should always be either taking you up to that moment where you break into song, or taking you down into a moment of despair where the only way you can say what is going on inside you is to sing. And the beautiful thing about musicals, or the power, I think, of musicals, like Shakespeare with soliloquy, is you can really sing about what's going on inside you. You can actually sing about your feelings, which you can't do if it's just straight talking.
Yes.
And so you get a shorthand into what's going on for someone in their internal life.
Shorthand and clarity.
And clarity, yeah.
Yeah. Because lyrics, I mean, Paul Williams once said beautifully, he says, lyrics have a clarity that is not poetry and is not dialogue, but expresses exactly the sentiment that you need. And in this regard, I think that you know, you can see the evolution of the musical. You can see, you know, George Stevens shooting it very contemplative, beautiful, almost like comedy, slapstick, beautiful, white frame, or, you know, Stanley Donen soaring on its own. You know, recently with West Side Story, the camera danced with the musical numbers. What did you or did you not study of these classical forms into approaching the movie?
So Bob Fosse's a massive influence. Like,
it has an all that jazz little.
All that jazz, very all that jazz, yeah. But also he would choreograph the camera in such a beautiful way. And on Showman, Ashley Wallon, the choreographer who also choreographed this film, would put his hands on the shoulder of the Steadicam operator, because we'd want the Steadicam operator on this count of the song to be here, and on that count of the song to be here. And the whole choreography was designed around that angle and this angle. And at the end of Showman, I said to Ashley, you're gonna have to just learn to camera operate.
Yes.
And that's what he did for Better Man.
For days. So that alone is an evolution.
Yeah, so Ashley, the choreographer, is also credited as the camera operator. Yeah.
That is so beautiful.
Because it's all to count, those camera moves.
Now, the other thing, there's 3 things that are the same thing, and I admire. The question, or the question that you may be asked the most is about the monkey. I think the movie is the entire answer to that question. There is no other way. I mean, it's not like, oh, and they decided, no. That's the only version of the movie that can exist.
Yeah, I wouldn't have made this film if it didn't have the monkey.
Precisely. No, and first of all, also technically, and we'll talk about it, and the animation is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Because it's such a delicate...
Yeah, that is a credit to John O'Davies, who did the performance, and to Weta, the team at Weta, because every visual effects company in the world, there's amazing, you know, they do amazing work. But the specific team that came together on this became their passion project. And they just, the work they did and the craft that they put into honoring the performance that Jono gave on set, and how they translated that to the proportions of a monkey is a masterclass for myself. I mean, my background's in animation, so I come from animation.
Let's talk about it for a second, because
Yeah.
you know, having done VFX most of my life, you know, in one way or another, whether it's optical, digital, composites, animation, anything, the design is not quite an anatomically correct monkey.
That's right.
The upper part is very human.
Yeah.
So that decision alone gets you very close to Uncanny Valley.
Yeah.
And instead of pulling you away, you end up being pulled in. So take me through that process.
So the design process, we did this. We literally did the evolution. We did full monkey and human, and then we went up and down the scale and looked at what were the advantages of going more monkey and what were the advantages of going more human. And always keeping in mind that once you end up in the Uncanny Valley, you've ruined your film. And then there's things that you just discover, like, you know, monkeys don't have defined eyebrows, you know, but our monkey has eyebrows. And human eyes are very different to monkey's eyes in terms of the pupils. And we made
The sclera.
Yeah,
The sclera is dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we made a very specific decision to high-res scan Robbie's eyes and have Robbie's eyes as the monkey's eyes. And there's something about the eyes being the window to the soul. There's something about Robbie looking out at you the whole film. And that's why they're in those close-ups. You really feel like you have him looking out at you. And then it became, we did a lot of design evolution, but really it only became clear what was going to work and what wasn't going to work was putting it into animation tests. Mm-hmm. So we started just taking clips of Robbie in interviews and animating over the top of them our different designs.
Ah, I see.
And it wasn't until we went into motion that those designs either clearly made sense or clearly did not work. But judging it as a still, it wasn't until we moved into motion that I felt the confidence to say, that's the right design, or I felt really confident to say, that's not going to work. And what we ended up doing was going more towards the human, and we didn't lean into the monkey at all in the performance side. Because again, there were moments where we were like, is this a moment where he becomes a little more like a monkey after he's done a certain amount of cocaine? And we played with that as well. And then it started becoming comical in a moment that you didn't want comedy at all.
Yeah, that's the thing that watching the movie, when it's a little bit like when you talk to an actor that is gonna wear prosthetics, you say you have to graduate it. You have to be in front of a mirror for a couple of hours before we start shooting and see how much is much, how little is little.
Yeah.
And the way, I mean, the subtle things and are as hard as the big things, because he evolves into full primate with the teeth and the curling of the lips.
Yeah.
It's a really great vocabulary you developed.
Yeah, and again, Jono Davies, the young man who plays Robbie, his study of Robbie and bringing Robbie to life and the confidence and the swagger, and then the smallest moments. One of my favorite moments in the entire film is not a big moment. It's him standing by the window just before he starts to sing Something Beautiful.
Yes.
And he's being forced to open up and reveal something more personal in his lyrics. And just him...
When he says you're gonna laugh.
Yeah, if you're gonna laugh, do it on the inside.
Don't do it on the inside, yes. Great moment.
Yeah, and it's not a big moment at all, but it's the performance is so subtle, and the animators, they managed to capture it so beautifully. It's a really tender moment.
But there's other things I noticed that were remarkable. I mean, look, we're talking everything we're talking about are directorial decisions. That's what is remarkable. Because these are things that are decided upon and carried upon to its ultimate consequence. One of the things that I admire is, as much as the face, is the hand.
Yeah.
The hands are absolutely staggeringly beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
And the other thing is the actor acts like a human, but overcompensates a little bit with the physicality of a monkey, and other times he does monkey gestures.
Yeah, there's very few moments where he does do it, but there's decisions that we made where we're like, you know, one where he's coming down the stairs after he's done heroin.
Yes.
And he's becoming very primitive, and you know, and he can barely stand up, and then he runs across the floor on all fours, you know, before he goes out the door. There are a few moments. There's also some interesting monkey screams.
Yes.
And then, strangely, when I was putting the monkey screams together, I realized that girls screaming at a concert and monkeys screaming are very, very similar. Just from an audio level.
Yeah.
So when the boys first perform in front of the girls in the nightclub and they all scream, I mixed in some monkeys screaming in there as well. And it's just unsettling. You're just like, I don't know why it is. I just feel this isn't a good thing. Like, you would think standing in front of an audience screaming at you is a moment of joy. And yet, because he's unsettled and he's seeing a version of himself in the audience, just mixing in some of those monkey screams before you ever see him in the audience, it just puts you in a place of like, why am I not feeling joy in this moment? And why am I not feeling joy in this moment is actually something that is all through the film, you know.
Yes. Well, that's one of the big questions.